Plan workshop. So this workshop is on May 17, 2021. It's 8:30 in the morning. And we appreciate you joining us today to learn a bit more about the regional plan. So with the release that we have coming up next week, we wanted to make sure that we gave our board members every chance that they might want to ask any questions before it came up on the official agenda. So first, I'm going to ask our interpreter, Carlos, to walk us through how to access our interpretation services for today's meeting. So go ahead, Carlos.
Good morning, Chair Blakespeare, and thank you. As the chair just announced, we will have interpretation available. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll down to the bottom of the Zoom screen.
Translang. I believe he
where the
may
meeting
have already
controls
activated
are.
the interpreter controls, so you won't hear him unless you're on an audio channel.
Please check if you can hear me on the main channel.
I can quickly go over those controls if you'd like.
I can hear you. I think you can be heard.
Okay, thank you. So again, my apologies for the interruption, but to use the interpretation feature, please scroll down to the bottom of the Zoom screen where your meeting controls are, click on the interpretation icon and select English as your language. If you are joining through the Zoom mobile app on a cell phone, tablet, and so on, please press the ellipsis first, the 3 dots, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish flow in the background. I will now repeat this announcement in Spanish. Muy buenos días y bienvenidos a este taller regional. Se está ofreciendo servicio de interpretación simultánea. Para hacer uso del servicio, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom y hacer clic en el icono de interpretación, parece un globo terráqueo, y seleccionar Spanish o español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom en celular, tableta, etc., presione primero los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Por último, si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, favor de seleccionar Mute Original Audio o silenciar audio original. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. So now we will move forward to the 2021 Regional Plan, San Diego Forward, and I will hand it over to Colleen.
Good morning, Chair Blakespeare and board members. Hassan, I don't know if you wanted to make any opening remarks before we start the workshop?
Go ahead,
okay.
Colleen. No, go ahead.
Great. So we're really pleased to have board members here with us today as we get ready to release the draft 2021 regional plan. And as you all know, we've been talking about this transformational transportation system that will be a completely harmonized system to optimize mobility for all residents of the region. Many of you over the last several weeks have had questions about the specific projects that make up the system. And that's what we're here to talk about today. And we did offer sub-regional briefings with all the board members over the last several weeks. And several of you took advantage of that. And we're doing something very similar today, but here in a public setting so that we can share this with the public as well. So in terms of our agenda today, what we're going to do is just set the stage for you in terms of the system. And then we're going to dig into the details. And we're going to do this by sub-region. One of the things I wanted to point out, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later, is that on Friday afternoon, we sent to all of you Appendix A. This is the detail that will be included in the 2021 regional plan that we'll post this Friday. And this lists all the specific projects and programs, the cost and phasing for each of these. And this is what we really want to dig in with you on today and answer any questions that you might have. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Ray Major to help us set the stage.
Thank you. Good morning. You know, when you think about what really the purpose is of a transportation system, it's to get people from where they are to where they want to go. It's from going from point A to point B. And a system is really this group of interactive, interrelated elements that really need to work together in order to be truly effective. And I think if you look at our current transportation system, you see that we have one, but it's not completely coordinated. And it's the coordination that's really key. It's the harmonization, the synchronization, and the coordination of these multiple different layers that really allow people to get from one place to another. Some parts of the system are meant to increase options for people so that they don't have to necessarily just drive or just walk to a certain location. Some of the parts of the system are meant to help with climate change. Some parts of the system help modify behavior, for instance, tolling and user charges. Some parts, like light synchronization, help increase efficiency. And some parts of the system call for optimization of things like physical space, like, for instance, curb management. This 2050 regional plan that we're looking at, by 2050, we will have over 10,000 transfer points within these various systems so that people can move from one layer to another and really be able to utilize the entire system together. This plan is radically different than anything that we've done before. And we finally are using technology really to overlay the whole thing to ensure that it works. So the first layer that we really look at is the land use layer. Everything starts at this particular level. So these areas that you see on the map here are the densest areas in our region. And we've referred to these as mobility hubs in some cases. And these are the areas that have the densest population and businesses. And we use the Sustainable Communities forecast when we take a look at what's going to happen in terms of growth in the future. These land uses are really densifications of the urban core that we're looking at. And so in these areas, you have options, for instance, for walking. We have to create a more walkable environment, and that's part of the plan. There's the availability of e-bikes, for instance, and flexible fleets that can take people short distances that they need to go inside of these areas. And there are different alternatives to driving. Now, going outside this community, or going out, if you want to go outside one of these communities, you may look at local buses. And local buses allow an alternative to driving. It's a system that allows people to move either short or moderate distances between two different points. And they may be going to different activities, they may be going shopping, or they may be going to school, but this system exists kind of on that base layer. These shorter trips, if they're taken by local buses, help to reduce VMT and GHG, which are some of the goals that we have in the plan. And they're also facilitated by that flexible fleet and e-bike system. The next system is the system of managed lanes. And the managed lanes are these inner regional corridors that are managed through tolling and through charges to allow us to be able to change user behavior and to also create a area where we can have these higher occupancy buses, for instance, going on them, like the rapids that I'll talk about next. When we take a look at the next layer, we're talking about the next generation of rapid. And these are types of buses that we don't currently have, but this is a system that allows fast movement between different places. It's convenient, it's safe, it's flexible. It would have something like a 10-minute head time, so they would always be available. And they run on separated guideways. They run on managed lanes that we talked about just momentarily before. And these systems allow for longer trips. So for instance, if people wanted to get to work, they could use these type of alternates to driving. And they would also be good for some of the more medium trips. And they're tied to the local areas. Next, we have light rail. Light rail can be used for shorter trips, but it also accommodates some of the longer trips that we have. And it's represented by the red lines that you see on that map. And this would help tie people to not only employment centers, but would also help tie people to higher education and all the different areas where you might want to go in terms of recreation. There's a lot more in the plan that goes with light rail. And this includes things like grade separation and helping cars and these light rail not necessarily conflict with each other. And finally, we have commuter rail. And the commuter rail are for these longer trips from either the border going up into the central business district where we have all of our employment centers, or down from the border coming into the same area, or in from the east. And you see this commuter rail being overlaid on top of that. So the regional plan proposes a system that has over 10,000 connections between these layers. And the system is made up of hundreds of projects that Colleen kind of mentioned that are in that Appendix A. And what we're really here to do is to talk to you about those projects. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Colleen.
All right, great. So now Ray talked about the system and how the system really helps provide travel options, how the whole system works together to optimize mobility for everyone. And I wanted to point out just a couple things when it comes to equity. Ray mentioned 10,000 connections. Those 10,000 connections are what are helping people get to jobs. Those connections are helping people get to higher education, to quality healthcare. And that's really important for upward mobility when it comes to equity. Also, travel options so that we're reducing greenhouse gas emissions and the improvements in the local communities. So the improvements in mobility hubs to make our communities more walkable, to make our communities more bikeable, that they're pleasant and safe places to be for those short trips, whether we're walking to school or for our basic needs. So what we're going to do now is we are going to have presentations from 3 or 4 of our team members to dig into the various subregions. And I want to start by just showing you a map that's included in Appendix A. And this explains how everything is organized. And so, Phil, if you can go to the next slide here, we have a map, the slide after that. This map shows the 11 corridors in the San Diego region. And there are multiple projects within each of these corridors. And these projects include the specifics on managed lanes and whether it's a connector connecting one freeway to another or the managed lane to the next managed lane for that fully connected system, all the transit lines, all the improvements that we're talking about for active transportation. And if you go to the next slide, Phil, that lays out everything we're talking about here: active transportation, connection, the connectors, what's happening on the rural corridors, goods movement. And this is really the opportunity for all of you to ask questions about the improvements in your specific communities, in your districts, in your cities. So the next slide. And this is where we're going to get into the sub-regional presentations. And we are going to start with a presentation from Brian Lane. And he's going to go through some of the details in the North County sub-region. And I guess I should also point out that there are more than 500 listings in here. Today, we're going to attempt to get through maybe a quarter of those, and we fully expect all of you to ask any questions that you have about anything that either we haven't mentioned, or you want clarity on something that one of the planners mentioned, or you've had a chance to peruse Appendix A and you have any questions about what's in here. This is the time to do that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brian.
Thanks, Colleen. So I'm going to zoom in on North County, a region that demonstrates a great opportunity for an integrated system mobility that captures the essence of what the 5 big moves can provide for everyone, from solo drivers to the transit dependent to those that want a safe and convenient option on their bike or scooter. Lots of residents take short trips around the region, yet there's a need for people to connect with other parts of the region for work and leisure travel. North County's coastal corridor serves as a thoroughfare for highway goods movement to Los Angeles, and that impacts the highway travel experience for North County residents needing to reach other communities in the area in a timely manner. Here's a snapshot of North County and how it can be re-envisioned from a transportation perspective to meet VMT reduction goals while improving quality of life for residents, employees, and visitors traveling throughout the area daily. In a second, I'll show you the existing system, and then we'll jump through what we envision for 2025, 2035, and for 2050. Data shows that people moving around North County are traveling in all directions. Commuters need to do short trip north to south trips, and they often jump on the 78 for just a few exits. Others are using the 78 to go the full 20 miles. There's a real opportunity to leverage the area's strong north-south arterial roadway network to ease demand on highways by deploying local on-demand fleets to make point-to-point connections. So now we're all very familiar with North County's existing transportation system and its challenges. Parts of the 78, 5, and 15 get congested at various times of the day. Today, without a complete system of managed lanes, even folks in a carpool are stuck in traffic when the managed lanes end on the I-15. Rail services are well placed in many places inland and along the coast, but the trains don't come often enough yet. Buses are often sitting in traffic, especially at congested intersections and other congestion points. Biking connections are somewhat weak or need to be much better protected from high-speed roadway traffic. It's also important, though, to recognize all the vital assets in North County. The region has thriving job centers. There are popular coastal destinations and thoroughfares to get there. Good roadway connectivity, enabling us to reach every North County community while respecting the area's lagoons, preserves, and agricultural areas. Projects identified in the draft regional plan for North County address these challenges in a way that produces tangible results. From a GHG reduction perspective, and our need to ensure people of all ages, abilities, and income levels have access to safe, fair, clean, and fast transit solutions. All of the regional mobility hub areas you see here already have developed to be full of home, work, shopping, dining, and recreational opportunities. These are the hotspots, so to speak, where coastal villages, colleges, major employment sites, and a lot of retail is based. People live, work, or visit these areas. While there may still be opportunities to plan and build some infill development, there's no questioning these locations as real travel destinations for North County, locals, and others in the region. So now, I'd like to walk you through a phased set of improvements that transition North County into a place where I truly believe that driving, riding transit, hailing a fleet, or biking can be all possible. All of the North County hub areas represent opportunities to introduce more travel options to the communities that the building blocks for hub success. A high concentration of people and places. All that needs to be added are a larger variety of convenient travel choices coupled with land use changes. Many people travel to or between North County coastal hubs via the I-5. By 2025, carpool lanes will be open and ready to help cars with 2 or more people flow much more freely up and down the coast. A vital inland rail trail link is added to the active transportation network, providing a safe off-street path that connects many rail stations, civic centers, and universities. You'll see the active network built out more by 2035. North County boasts a solid arterial roadway network connecting many communities. 2025 will serve as a starting point for implementing smart intersection improvements and other active demand management technologies to ensure pooled rides and local transit can cruise by the congestion. These technology improvements work to enhance safety and more efficient operations for all modes. A new next-gen rapid service connecting Escondido to Oceanside via Palomar Airport Road and a portion of SR 78, offering a much-needed east-west connection traversing the area's 3 major hub centers, while offering a Sprinter South type of experience. Rapid vehicle priority on the road coupled with 10-minute frequencies will contribute to a stress-free travel experience. Rail travel up and down the coast is more convenient with coaster trains running every 30 minutes during the peak commute times. And then while not shown on the map, local buses will start seeing improvements as well, getting some of the same priority treatments as next-gen rapids, with some routes getting frequency and span of service bumps to help those that need transit outside standard working hours. Working with the transit agencies, the region will continue to convert transit vehicles to zero emission, helping to make our region's air quality even better. So over the next 10 years, the region will start seeing more projects and policies come online, making the 5 Big Move system even more robust. 2035 is a pivotal point for our regional mobility hub areas as transit and roadway infrastructure is greatly enhanced, all while providing a unique place for a wide variety of flexible fleets to thrive. Everything from personal owned micromobility to on-demand shuttles that help people reach coaster or sprinter and all types of local destinations. True door-to-door options. Since it's simply not practical to feature fixed route transit services on every road and guarantee a transfer-free experience, particularly in a suburban setting like North County that also features challenges with canyons and hills, our mobility hubs and flexible fleets will be needed to move residents more creatively. In 2035, we fully deploy managed lanes on SR 78 to ease congestion and really have the corridor be responsive and near real time to current traffic conditions. A better managed corridor has a positive impact on all the local roads connecting to it. Freeway and managed lanes connectors offer a much smoother, congestion-free transition between the 78 in both directions on the 5 and 15. Completed inland rail trail between Oceanside to Escondido and everywhere in between, really allowing for residents to use their bikes for commutes, errands, and for fun. Even more bike path miles along the coast and inland to help folks rapidly adopting e-bikes and other micromobility solutions move more safely in their neighborhoods. The frequent coaster service gets extended to Camp Pendleton and can start seeing speeds up to 110 miles an hour to decrease travel times. The Sprinter will now be coming every 15 minutes all day, with added double tracking and grade separations, keeping as much roadway traffic away from the rails. 5 new rapid services come online, heading in various directions, as so many North County residents do, making it possible to travel from hub to hub. Palomar Airport Road is reimagined as a tech-savvy corridor while giving Rapid the fixed guideway priority and attention it deserves to reach the thriving tech industry North County has worked so hard to nurture and grow. Local buses and flexible fleets will be given more operating funds to increase services where they truly are needed. By now, we'll be offering transit for cheaper for many riders, so residents and workers will see transit as the perfect option for them. As you can see with this build out by 2035, the region has extensive managed lanes and connectors, smarter streets, and lots more transit options. The options for those without access to a car will be equitable, allowing for economic freedom for all. So by 2050, our denser neighborhoods and businesses are built up with safer streets and smarter managed roads and freeways. County residents in or near mobility hubs will now have enough fast and safe options to do their errands and work trips in something other than their car. For those that still need to drive, we continue to manage the roads and freeways. I-15 north of Escondido will get managed lanes to the county line. I-5 from the county line to the South County will now be fully managed as well. Our bike network will continue to grow and be connected to more and more places. As we've seen in other great regions of the country and the world, once these networks are built, people really will use them. The Sprinter gets extended to the Escondido Mall, and we will see 10-minute frequencies. Again, with built up mobility hubs and frequencies like these on local buses and rapids, Coaster and Sprinter, riders will be able to take transit seamlessly. With the Coaster seeing further improvements near the university area, more residents and employees will be able to take a couple modes of transit and get to where they need to go quickly and safely. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alex to show you the east-west connections.
Thank you, Brian. Good morning. My name is Alex Estrella, and I served as a co-lead for the complete quarters with Tuari Faola, and both of us will be presenting the east-west subregion. And here's a snapshot of the proposed improvements along the subregion, which is bound by the I-5 corridors, as you can see, to the west, and it also extends to the inland communities through our suburban and rural communities to the east. And this subregion is characterized by a diverse range of environments from the rural inland communities to the urban neighborhoods along the western end. Now, through this subregion, our data reveal that critical travel connections are being made by people commuting from rural and suburban residential areas in the east to urban communities and outlying job centers. And within this subregion, we also considered the mobility needs of our rural communities. For example, for our rural corridors, just like State Route 67, access for emergency evacuations and access for first responders to rural communities is a critical need. So to address and help meet the needs of the subregion, among the central projects that you will see for the subregion include, for example, some early improvements in rapid transit services, intersection and railway technology improvements in the early stages of the regional plan. But we also have 3 managed lanes along the subregion, which are complemented with next generation rapid transit services. We also have a major commuter rail proposed by the 2050 phase. So when all put together, all the projects proposed in this subregion really create a fabric that will provide convenient travel options, improve connectivity within and between these regional hubs that you see here and within the respective communities to improve transportation system efficiency, safety, and while reducing congestion and VMT. Now, before we introduce the projects by phase, let me just walk you through some of the existing network conditions in the subregion. Now, there are several corridors that provide that backbone for the east-west travel in this region, connecting people and goods to places of employment, local community, businesses and shops, and residences. Now, currently, the primary corridors within this area include, for example, State Route 52, I-8, and State Route 94, and we also have State Route 67 to the east. Now, these corridors also serve connecting points to the other major corridors that you will hear as part of the other presentations, or you heard also from Brian. And these include, for example, the I-5 corridor, the State Route 63, the 805, and the State Route 125. Now, these corridors are limited in transit options with the exception of I-8, which is served by the green line and orange lines. Now, there are also a number of rapid buses that traverse the subregion. As you can see here, we have the I-15 rapid services, the Mid-City and the Mid-Center line stations, and we also have the South Bay Rapid that comes from along the 805 and then uses the State Route 95. Now, we recognize that there are many other local transit services, but we're only highlighting the rapid services for the existing conditions. Other transit services that traverse this region include the Oceanside to downtown San Diego commuter rail, and we also see the Mid-City Mid-Coast trolley, which you can see here on the top left. And supplementing this, we also have the building out of the adoptive active transportation projects. Now, within this subregion, it is important to recognize the existing community assets to make communities in the subregion mobility hubs. So for example, El Cajon demonstrates the building blocks for a solid gateway mobility hub, serving as an entry point into the regional light rail network located in downtown that has already embraced development. Now, also included in this subregion, we have the Kearny Mesa and the Mission Valley Mobility Hub, which are the region's top set of job centers that demonstrate how new job centers can be provide dense housing development that can be co-located with employment to offer a live-work experience. And to the west of this region, we have the largest mobility hub, which is the urban core. Now let's take a look at the first phase of proposed improvements for the subregion. So one of the first steps of addressing the travel needs of the subregion is to implement the technology backbone that will allow us to holistically manage highways and arterials within the mobility hubs concepts. So the map here shows a system of complete quarters regional arterial, which Brian also introduced in his region, which is part of the initial investments for the subregion in 2025. Now, proposed improvements along this local network of arterials includes the implementation of a smart intersection system. Now, this concept includes technology that allows and processes data for traffic signal controllers, sensors, and connected vehicles to monitor and adjust signal operation. With this technology, we can improve travel times, reduce stop and go conditions, and create a safe environment for local streets and intersections. Now, this concept also includes smart sensors technology. And this technology can create a safe environment for bicyclists, pedestrians, and these smart sensors can also provide data on collisions and near misses, so unsafe intersections and roadway segments can be identified for improvements. This technology will provide the priority treatments for rapid transit services, freight, and emergency vehicles to enhance travel times and on-time performance. Now, this technology is built upon an existing project currently underway in partnership with Caltrans, Sandag, and the county to incorporate 18 miles of fiber on State Route 67 from Lakeside to Ramona this summer. Now, this broadband connectivity is needed for the technology solutions to improve operations, improve traffic flow, but also improve safety. Also, adding fiber also closes the loop of our rural digital divide by expanding affordable, high-speed internet services to the communities along the corridor. Now, these early investments in the 2025 really provide the infrastructure, communication technology, which serve as the foundation for our rural complete quarter concepts and the next OS 5 big moves. Additional investments in 2025 include 3 rapid light transit services, which are supported by the regional arterial network and the technology. And this includes the rapid from Kearny Mesa, one of our region's Tier 1 employment centers, to Pacific Beach. Another one from La Mesa to North Park and Hillcrest on University Avenue, connecting with Ocean Beach. We also have a rapid from Spring Valley through the Southeast San Diego to downtown San Diego. Now, these routes serve our low-income communities, providing much needed connection to our neighborhood schools, our parks, the beach, medical facilities, and jobs. Other noted proposed transit projects that traverse this region include upgrades to our commuter services. This includes the coaster and the Pacific Surfliner that traverse this region within the Gaslamp as well area. Now, supplementing this this list of projects includes providing the missing links to our active transportation network projects for the San Diego River Trail or the Pershing Drive Bikeway. Now I'm going to turn it over to Tuari, and she's going to walk us through the proposed investments for the 2035 and 2050 phase.
Thanks, Alex. So Brian spoke earlier about 2035 being a pivotal point in our region's mobility, and that's certainly the case here. The new complete corridor investments start with the development of managed lanes. A core part of the managed lanes network is technology that makes our corridors smart and responsive to real-time conditions. The next OS will allow us to monitor, manage, and optimize our freeway network, traffic signals, ramp meters, and transit operations. It also provides new tools like dynamic lane assignment, speed harmonization, real-time traveler information, and dynamic routing. And the investment in smart infrastructure like sensors and communications technology makes the hard infrastructure responsive and adaptable to changing conditions. Connected technologies can help prevent accidents and save lives, helping cities and our region achieve Vision Zero goals. So I'd like to highlight a few of the new managed lanes projects within this subregion, starting with State Route 52. So this is a critical connection between the El Cajon Gateway Mobility Hub and the Kearney Mesa Major Employment Center. It has 3 managed lanes between the Interstate 805 and Mass Boulevard. One of those lanes would be reversible, and with technology, allow us to be responsive to the changing demands of this corridor by adding capacity where it's needed most. Interstate 8 has 4 managed lanes between I-805 and Greenfield Drive in El Cajon, which will encourage carpooling and add capacity to this major goods movement corridor. And State Route 94 between Interstate 5 and State Route 125 has 3 managed lanes, and State Route 125 has 2 managed lanes. These east-west managed lanes projects provide a direct connection to the north-south corridors that by not only providing a system of managed lanes, but also supporting connectors and direct access ramps for transit to connect suburban and the rural parts of our county to major medical campuses, key employment centers, and universities and more. So these corridors, with the complete corridors arterial network that you heard Alex talk about earlier, provide improved access for east-west travel within our region and improve connections for State Route 67 that's shown here on the map in green. This has shoulder widening and straightening projects that are proposed for 2035 between Mapleview and Dye Road. And there are multiple rapid routes proposed for 2035 in this subregion. And several of them are very much dependent upon the complete corridors managed lane network. I'll walk you through a few of them. Looking at the top here, you can see the rapid from State Route 52. It provides a transit alternative and a 1-seat ride from El Cajon and Santee to the major employment centers of Kearney Mesa and Sereno Valley. Key to the success of this route are the mobility hub features, which make taking transit easier with investments in car share, ride share, microtransit, as well as park and ride facilities at anchor transit stations, as well as much more, all while working with local jurisdictions on these mobility improvements. And by 2035, the rapid that Alex spoke to you about earlier that serves our low-income and communities of color from Spring Valley to the east through Southeast San Diego to the west, all the way to downtown, will be improved to have dedicated lanes to prioritize transit for this corridor. And rapid services will continue to supplement those east-west routes, providing localized travel and connection to San Diego State University, as you can see in the middle of the map, traveling along Euclid Avenue, 54th, and College Avenue. And there's an additional East County new line that will have a new rapid that connects from El Cajon all the way down to South Bay and the border. So the expansion of the rapid network is supported by improvements to the 2 existing light rail lines, the orange and the green lines, by adding double and triple tracking and grade separations to these light rail lines, not to mention the improved connections to all of the other major transit investments, as you can see with the purple commuter rail line here shown, or our Low Sand corridor. And even more of the adopted bike network gets built out by 2035, such as the full on-street connection for the San Diego River Trail between State Route 52 and Interstate 8, and the Center City project from La Mesa to Encanto. And these connections will allow people to safely bike to work, bike for leisure, or to school between communities such as La Mesa, Lemon Grove, and Encanto. So moving further east within the subregion, there are proposed additional improvements on the rural corridors, which include widening of shoulders to create median buffers or turning lanes to allow emergency responders rapid access. There are also curve warning and speed feedback signs to improve safety, the implementation of lane assignment and routing to provide rapid access and greater capacity, and better travel information for roadway conditions or emergency notifications. So now let's move into 2050. Much of the east-west managed lanes network and connectors are built out in 2035. But the additional managed lane segments and supporting connectors along State Route 52 and Interstate 8 west of I-805 are proposed for 2050, along with the remaining northern segment of State Route 125. So the expansion of the rapid system is supported by improvements to the existing green and orange light rail lines, and also the new east-west commuter rail line, where the Gateway Mobility Hub and El Cajon connects all the way down to the urban mobility hub, giving riders the choice of continuing directly into downtown or giving them the choice to go directly to the Central Mobility Hub, which provides direct access to the airport. So by 2050, it's also anticipated that all of our mobility hub features, flexible fleets, and opportunities for increased land use densities within these hubs will be fully realized. And by 2050, the full build out of our adopted bike plan will be in place, supporting the mobility hubs, transit, and regional connections, completing links along corridors such as State Route 52, that one could travel from Santee to Sorrento on a bike, making this truly a complete corridor. And you can see here in this next slide, the full build out of all the proposed east-west connections within the subregion. So when all of the regional plan projects are put together, you can see the proposed improvements meets the needs for east-west travel, which also does include, again, adding capacity through a system of managed lanes, some of them having reversible lanes to meet the corridor's changing demands. And these investments will provide additional travel options that are not there today, and improve connectivity within and around the mobility hubs. These projects really do continue to recognize the different mobility needs within the subregion and provide efficient transportation options for everyone. And with that, I'll now turn it over to Jennifer to talk about our South to Central subregion.
Good morning. I'm Jennifer Williamson. I'm a principal planner here at Sandag and the co-lead for the Transit Leap move of the regional plan. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about our south and central portion of the region. Just to familiarize yourself with what area we're going to be covering, this area is bounded by SR 56 to the north, the I-15, 125 to the east, the international border to the south, and the Pacific Ocean to the west. This area is home to our 3 Tier 1 employment centers, all of our light rail services, all of our rapid services, some of the densest communities in the region, as well as some of our primary activity centers. Next slide, please. So first, let's take a look at our existing system that we have out there today. And we'll start with the I-15, which is shown in the northeast corner of your map here. And this is really our primary managed lanes that we have operating in the region today. And I'm sure you're all very familiar with how I-15 operates, but just so you know, we have 4 managed lanes in the center of the freeway, which allows for shared rides and transit to have a full level of priority. There are 2 direct access ramps on the I-15 shown in this graphic, one at Sabre Springs and one at the Hillary Dar. This allows for transit to access at these sites to major transit centers. And then as we look at the regional transit network, you'll see the purple line there, and that's our coaster low sand corridor. The coaster has had extensive improvements of late, including double tracking and improvements to the Del Mar cliffs. So those are shown there in the purple. You'll see our light rail system shown in the magenta on the slide here. And as I said, this portion of our subregion includes all of our light rail lines. So you have the blue line trolley that operates from San Ysidro all the way up to Old Town today. And then very exciting, in November, it will operate all the way to University City. We also have our green line that provides connections from Old Town across Mission Valley to serve SDSU, very important university, and then over to Santee. And then finally, you'll see the orange line in the eastern portion of the sub area, which operates between downtown San Diego and El Cajon Boulevard. This really provides the primary backbone of our transit system. I mentioned that we do have our five rapid services in this region as well, and you'll see those identified in the map in green. So probably the key component of our existing network that you're very well familiar with is that a number of our active transportation routes are under construction right now, and they'll be in place for 2025, which will allow us to build on the active transportation network. Next slide, please. So let's talk about what's happening in 2025. If you look at the complete corridors and you look at the southeastern edge of your graphic there, you'll see that we have the addition of a new State Route 11 that will attach to the Otay Mesa border crossing. This is an essential goods movement corridor that provides a whole new access for freight and trucks to access our transit system. You'll also see that our mobility hubs come up here, and we kind of call these mobility hubs in training, if you will. The urban areas of San Diego are ripe for transportation options, and San Ysidro today largely acts as a de facto mobility hub, with the exception of the land uses. We have extensive micro-mobility down at San Ysidro. We have a large number of transit options, and people are able to make short trips, medium trips, and long trips from San Ysidro today. So as you go up into the central part of the corridor, what you'll see here is that we have a connector that connects from the 125 and the 94. And if you'll recall, a couple of years ago at our board meeting, we heard that this was a very poorly designed interchange, and that this connector was needed so that we allowed for free flow conditions between these two major freeways. And then finally, you'll see kind of the squiggly lines in the center of your graphic there. That's our active transportation routes. And as I said before, what we're doing in 2025 is really building off the success of the Transnet Bike Early Action Program. And you'll see here we have our Central Avenue bike lane, and we have the Pershing. Those are the dark squiggles on your map there. And those really provide a fully off-street bike lane for people of all ages and all activity levels. And as Alex and Tueri shared with you before, overlaid on top of all of this, kind of in the background, is our Next OS and our smart signals and smart technologies. Next slide, please. And here you have the coaster that comes down. And what's happening with the coaster, as I said before, the Los Angeles corridor has had extensive improvements. In 2025, because we have laid the groundwork with the double tracking of the coaster, we're able to increase the frequencies and headways. We're also continuing to make those improvements to the bluffs as we access downtown San Diego and get the coaster off the coast there. Next slide, please. So now we're in 2035, and really what you see here is that the mobility hubs get much darker. And the reason for that is that all the transit investments, the Next OS investments, and the incentives that we're providing for flexible fleet operators allows us to really start to intensify the areas around where transit and our complete corridors are going to be operating. What you see here first on this graphic is our complete network of managed lane system throughout the south and central portion of the corridor. I know it looks like a lot of squiggly lines, but let's break it down a little bit for you. So the I-5 and the I-805 will move to a condition with 6 lanes and 6 lanes and 4 managed lanes, almost operating the entire distance along that corridor, along both those corridors. We also add our managed lanes connectors, and those are the green dots that you see between each of the different types of managed lanes on the system. The managed lanes in this portion of the county are going to be largely used for transit and shared mobility. But also, I can't focus enough on how important 805 and 5 are for goods movement. With SR 11 and the new POE coming online, it becomes very critical that the 805 offers some level of priority for goods movement to continue to operate seamlessly the entire distance from north to south in this corridor. The I-15 in 2030 gets completed. Right now, you'll see that it ends just to the north of the 52. In this phase of the plan, we'll be extending it all the way down to the 94 with 4 managed lanes and the connectors that support those. I'm not going to focus on our east-west lines that are shown on this graphic because you heard about those from Tueri and Alex. But let's just look real quickly at some of the inner city or the urban corridor managed lanes. Those do come up, and Alex and Tueri talked to you a little bit about those. So you'll see that the 52 comes online and the 94 managed lanes come online as well through the center of our area. Next, please. So now we have our bike system. And as you heard before, the focus of this phase of the project is to complete our coastal rail trail. This is a 44-mile bike route that will operate all the way from Oceanside down to downtown San Diego. And that'll be one great ride, I think, once you can make that in its entirety. So pieces of that ride or that system come together here in 2035. Additionally, the Bayshore Bikeway, which we've been working on for many, many years, gets largely completed in this phase of the plan. So you'll be able to ride a bike from downtown San Diego and then wrap around all the way through to Coronado. And then the San Diego River Trail, providing connections to SDSU West and other points along the Mission Valley area, will be completed in this phase of the plan. So next, let's talk about transit. It's my favorite. So here is our next generation rapid routes. There's over 20 of these rapid routes in the study area. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm open to answering any questions. What I'd like to focus on here is some of our next generation rapid routes in different portions of the community. I neglected to tell you that in 2025, we do have 4 rapid routes that come online, and I think you saw those, but we can go back if you'd like to cover those. But in 2035, some additional routes come online, and those include the Rapid 640 along I-5 that will use the managed lanes that I mentioned earlier. Rapid 640 is kind of a precursor, if you will, for the Blue Line Express, and it will provide for a one-seat ride all the way from the border into downtown San Diego, and it'll help relieve some of the congestion that we have on our trolley lines today. And then if you look down at the south side of at the south bottom portion of your map, if you will, we have the Rapid 709. We learned from our outreach efforts that we need better connectivity between the trolley and our eastern communities of Chula Vista. Rapid 709 will provide a fast, convenient access from the Blue Line to Southwestern College and to Otay Ranch. That's a primary movement that we saw again and again in our research. And then continuing up through the center of our region, we have Rapid 41 that will connect Fashion Valley through Claremont, Linda Vista, serve UTC, and ultimately UCSD, providing yet another critical link to our universities in the region. And finally, we'll skip up to the top of that map along Mira Mesa Boulevard between I-15 and 805. You'll see 2 rapid routes connecting Mira Mesa and Sorrento Valley. One of those is our existing Rapid 237, which will get improvements to provide a higher level of service, more priority, and faster speed along Mira Mesa Boulevard. We've also been working cooperatively with the city of San Diego on acquiring some right-of-way along Carroll Canyon Road for future development there. So you'll see a parallel line to Mira Mesa Boulevard with a rapid route that will operate between I-15 and I-805, and then ultimately into UTC and UCSD. Now let's talk about the rail projects. So the light rail in 2035 gets extensive improvements as well. We have a fabulous foundation with the trolleys that are out there today, but we'll be looking to speed those up. We'll be looking at all the stations to ensure that they are productive stations and warranted in those areas. We'll also be looking at where we can add double tracking in Santee. We'll be identifying areas where we can do grade separations to provide a higher level of speed and connectivity in the region. And in 2025 and 2035, I neglected to mention that all of our transit services will get increases in frequency and span of service. For simplicity's sake, all of our transit services will be operating basically at 10 minutes all day. And what we've learned with transit is that if you can offer 10-minute service all day, people can throw away their schedules. They don't need them anymore because they can walk out and they're virtually guaranteed a ride. So now let's talk about passenger rail. So what you see here is our passenger rail, and the line that comes down the coast, I-5, is our low sand corridor. And we have some big changes planned for 2035, if you will. In 2035 on the low sand corridor, the coaster will get the Del Mar Tunnel. So essentially we'll be able to finally get the coaster off the cliffs there. We'll also be looking at adding a station at UTC. And then as we continue southbound into downtown San Diego, a new station at the convention center. Increased frequencies on the coaster will allow people to access that route all day long. And then the other route that you see here on the map, and we'll start at the south portion in National City, the purple line there is our purple line. And this one is very exciting and near and dear to me. So this project in 2035 would operate from National City. It would continue up through the center of our subregion, if you will. It will serve City Heights we currently have it at the Centerline station. And then it will go down to serve SDSU West. And then ultimately it will travel over to Kearny Mesa to provide access to the the hospital centers, the Sharp and Children's Hospital Centers along 163 there. Connect into the employment site of Kearny Mesa over to UTC, and then terminate in this phase of the plan at Sorrento Mesa. And let me just share with you real quickly that this graphic right here does not show the alignment traveling through to City Heights. Through subsequent analysis and study, we are encouraging and will be identifying that the route does travel through City Heights in the text of the regional plan. So with that, let's move to 2050. Oh, and I'm sorry, Phil, can you go back to 2035? I apologize, I forgot something. So, you know, I focused a lot on all the projects that are on the graphic, but there's some really good goods movement projects that I want to take a minute to highlight in this phase of the plan too. So we have the Harbor Drive 2.0 study. That's kind of a weird name, but essentially what it means is that we're doing pedestrian and goods movement on Harbor Drive to facilitate better access to our ports and the goods movement areas of the Harbor Drive area. We know that's a very congested area today, and that will be extensive improvements. And that'll include a high level of technology improvement as well. And then additionally, we have the Vesta Drive or the Vesta pedestrian bridge. And this has been a project long in the making. And what this will do is it'll connect the wet and dry sides of the port and the military bases out there and allow people to pass without having to access the major roadways. So those are a couple of very significant projects that I didn't want to gloss over. So 2050. In 2050, you know, the managed lanes are largely built out. So we only have a few more left. And these are our urban managed lanes that you'll see here in 2050. And these are identified, you'll see at the bottom of our corridor, we have the 905 come online. This is 2 managed lanes. in each direction from I-5 all the way over to SR-11. This will help facilitate, again, great access for goods movement as well as cars. But then also we have a rapid route that will travel through that area and really benefit from the inclusion of those managed lanes. We have an additional 2 lanes on the 125 operating all the way from the Otay Mesa border all the way up into Chula Vista to connect to the 54. And what I'll share with you in a minute is that we have some rapid routes that will cut across the 54 as well to make use of the managed lanes. And then all the way up at the north part of our corridors, the 56. And those get 2 managed lanes as well. And what that'll do is provide point-to-point priority access for our rapid routes that operate from I-15 over to our job center at Sorrento Valley and UTC. So those connectors are really quite essential in this portion of our study of our phase year 2050. Next slide, please. So here we have our bike lanes, and really the focus in 2050 is on providing connections to our new central mobility hub, which is going to be critical and thriving at that point. And these active transportation projects will allow for all the micro mobility and flexible fleets to operate from the central mobility hub out to our urban communities. And then additionally, we will finalize that coastal rail trail, that 44 miles is complete in this portion of the plan. And then at the south end of the graphic there, you see that we are focused on providing better connectivity to the border in this portion of the plan. Next slide. And now the rail and the light rail. So again, the purple line we showed you earlier will have a portion of this route extend down from National City all the way to San Ysidro, and then over to the cross-border terminal. That'll provide a 1-seat ride from the border up to our urban communities. And then we add a branch. So the lines branch at National City. One goes up to our urban communities, and then one comes along our I-5 coastal communities to access downtown San Diego and the Central Mobility Hub. And before I go a little bit further, when we first started the development of the regional plan, we talked about the importance of the Circle 8, if you will, for transit access. And if you look at this graphic, what you'll see is that we achieved the Circle 8. The circles and the curves aren't as prominent as we might have made with the previous version, but for rail, you don't really do curves. So you do see here that we do have a Circle 8, which will allow for an incredible amount of connectivity and access from all points of the region. As Alex and Tweri mentioned before, our east-west line comes in and it cuts across from El Cajon all the way into downtown San Diego or the Central Mobility Hub. One of the more exciting pieces of our rail network in this phase, if you look up to the north end of the map now, the coaster comes down, and as you're all aware right now, it stops in Sorrento Valley, which is just west of the freeway as the station today. Doesn't allow the best connectivity in the world, and we have to provide a lot of shuttle service to get folks up to the Mesa. So what we're looking at here in 2050 for the coaster is a branch line that will operate along from the Del Mar Tunnel and bring folks up into the Mesa to connect to the Purple Line and to a very significant mobility hub in Sorrento Valley that will provide for a large option of flexible fleets, micromobility, scooters, e-bikes, you name it. Sorrento Valley, I believe, will have those options available to us. So next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry, Phil. I'm gonna have to ask you to go back. There's so many projects. I keep kind of mixing them up. But finally, the light rail system, I can't leave that alone here. So we've basically added our double tracking, we've increased frequencies, and we've done grade separations. And so now in this portion of the plan, we're really focused on frequency and the analysis of where additional grade separations might be warranted across the system on the light rail network. So I just wanted to put that plug in. And with that, I think that wraps up most of our projects in 2050. And I'm going to turn it over to Colleen to wrap us up.
I know that was a lot of information to get through. With that, we are ready to turn it back to you, Chair Blakespear. I don't know if we need a short break. We had put that into the agenda, but I think everyone's prepared to move forward. So I'll turn it back to you, Chair Blakespear, if you'd like to introduce our facilitator, and then we can get started with the questions.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I think that was really fascinating. And it's great to see the plan. I mean, I think we've been talking about the concepts for a long time, and I'm really inspired by seeing the plan, and especially that map at the beginning that had the overlays of what was described as 10,000 connections. You know, I know that plans by their nature are a roadmap, so you have to know where you're going in order to get there. And so it's really exciting when we put that plan together. I think as a local policymaker and elected, my mind immediately goes to the how. And so, you know, we know that SANDAG is a planning organization, but also builds projects. But of course, cities have land use authority, and then we have transit agencies that are actually making proposals and suggestions about things like 10-minute intervals and what kind of services are offered. And so, like if you're thinking about a mobility hub and you have bicycles or you have transit or scooters or shuttles, you know, all those kinds of things will be decisions that are made jointly between SANDAG and others. And so others meaning the locals and the transit agencies. And so I wanted to make sure that as part of this next phase of the discussion that we talk about how and when that process begins. That's really much more intensive between the cities and the transit agencies about the how, because you know some of the dates that were presented were really in a short time frame, like 2025 is 4 years from now. So, and then 2035, and you know, thinking about how we're going to accomplish these things it's just not clear to me what the timeline is on that. And then also, of course, prioritizing these projects. You know, with 10,000 of them, there's a lot to prioritize. So I'm going to hand it to the facilitator, but I'm hopeful that the SANDAG staff, and I'm not exactly sure who wants to address those things, but can get into that a little bit, since part of the goal of this is to have the elected officials who serve on SANDAG have a comfort level and an understanding of what the regional plan means. So with that, I think we should skip the break right now. We have 78 people who are participants and others watching, and I fear if we go to a break just 1 hour in, we'll lose that good momentum we have. So I'd like to maybe postpone the break if we need it a bit later, but go to our facilitator, Lisa Gordon, who is joining us today. And she is a speaker and facilitator and has done many trainings, retreats, and workshops. So I will hand it over to her to manage this next part.
Thank you, Chair Blakespear. I want to check my volume and make sure that is okay. You can hear me
yes, we
appropriately.
Can hear you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Lisa Gordon. I'm really excited to be your facilitator for this very important regional planning workshop. I always like to introduce myself as a very proud fourth generation native San Diegan. So this region really means a lot to me and to the generations of my family that have called San Diego home. I really care about San Diego, the future of San Diego, so I certainly appreciate all of the great work that you're doing through this thoughtful planning and the decisions that you're making that contribute to the quality of life of our great region. Along with being a native San Diegan, as Chair Blakespear just mentioned, I am the CEO of Lisa Inspires, a training, facilitation, and consulting firm where I empower and train leaders, staffs, and teams, facilitate meetings, strategic planning sessions, and retreats. And I've worked with a variety of San Diego's board of directors, public officials, including your city council members, your port commissioners as well. So some of you may recognize me me from my past facilitation work. Prior to becoming a facilitator, I spent more than 25 years in the community government business and also international relations arenas. And I've served on behalf of a mayor, a city, a school district, a nonprofit, a public agency, and thousands of small businesses. So as your facilitator, my overall approach is to create an environment in which we can really have an open dialogue, and a dialogue that bridges gaps, that honors participants' views, perspectives, voices, and creates a safe environment for you to do that. An environment that is inclusive, open, and trusting, as well as an environment that is proactively engaging and creates a listening opportunity for you. I kind of like to describe my facilitation philosophy as help me help you. Help me help you have a meaningful, constructive, and productive discussion. So a few ground rules to help you with that today. I want to just make sure that you are aware that I am serving you, all of you, in a neutral capacity. And so my job is partly administrative, where I am just really trying to keep us on track, focused on time, and making our time together as organized, as efficient, and as productive as possible. But I'm also aiming to create an environment that encourages thoughtful questioning and emphatic listening. So today's primary focus, as you've heard from staff, is for you to have all those questions answered that you have about this regional plan. So we are predominantly going to focus on your questions first, and then we'll get to comments if you have those. So to keep this discussion organized, I'm going to first ask for your clarifying questions that are going to help you, strengthen your understanding of the projects, the programs, the systems, and the technology specified in the regional plan. Our process for kind of filtering your questions is I will be working with Colleen as well, but I'm going to ask you to use the raise your hand function when we are ready for you to raise your hand, and we will make a list of those people that would like to speak. And then as you pose your question, Colleen will help with identifying the appropriate staff to address your questions. So we ask that you pose your questions and that you speak as succinctly as possible to respectfully allow time for all the questions that your colleagues have. So as I mentioned, following our Q&A, we can get into more comments as time permits. Please, one last thing I want to say is that if the conversation appears to be a little bit off track or not central to the discussion or the question being asked, Chair Blakespear or I may interrupt you. So please know that we may do that, and just to make sure that we can use the time most effectively. So who would like to start with our first question? I already see Mayor Hall's hand raised. So let's start with Mayor Hall.
Yes. Could you please describe the difference between an HOV lane and a rapid transit lane would be my first question. And then my second question is how many new HOV lanes will be built by 2035 and 2050 throughout the county?
You guys going to turn on the camera for us? So thank you for the question, Mayor Hall. Tuari, I'm going to ask you to look at what was the second part of your question, Mayor Hall, was about how many
HOV
lanes?
lanes will be constructed by 2025 and then, or 2035 and at 2050.
Okay.
And I'm most particular is where you have 4 HOV lanes on which roads?
Okay. So the first question you had is just what's the difference between an HOV lane and a rapid lane? So when we talk about the HOV lanes, we also call those managed lanes. And the way we've broken that down in the plan is that the HOV lanes would also support rapid bus service. So it all has to be managed And I think, probably the best example we have of that today, which I know you're very familiar with, are the managed lanes on Interstate 15, where it's HOV, so it's free for people to carpool. It's where the buses run, and then for those who want to drive alone, they can pay to use those lanes. So that's probably the best example of how we envision the HOV lanes throughout the entire system. Obviously, over time, pricing becomes a bigger part of all of that. And then, Tuweri, do you have
Oh, Colleen, before you leave,
Yeah.
just to make sure we're clear, Mayor Hall, there will not be what we traditionally called high occupancy vehicle lanes added to the system between now and 2035. There will be what Colleen described as managed lane, where it allows carpooler, say 3+ to go free and buses to go free. But the traditional high occupancy vehicle lanes we're not proposing any between now and 2035.
And so I appreciate that. Maybe I don't understand the, exactly the difference, and like you say, there's HOV lanes, managed lanes, and rapid lanes. It sounds to me that they're kind of all one and the same,
Yes.
with the understanding that they're going to be charged for.
Yes.
So again, this is part of a learning process, and maybe I shouldn't be using the word HOV, but I should be using the word managed lanes.
That's correct.
And so that's why I asked in your presentation, you talked about several new rapid bus lanes, which are, I think, managed lanes. So I was just wanting them to rechange my nomenclature, if you would, and say, show me where the new managed lanes are going to be between now and 2035 and now in 2050. So I have a better understanding of how that works.
Correct, and great question, because just to repeat, I think all the managed lane system will allow carpooler, most likely 3+ and buses to go free, but the rest will be charged. It's like the I-15, but it will be proposed to be dynamically priced. There is no limit to the price, so it will be like congestion pricing. But that's a great question, Merhol. It's a good clarification. The traditional high occupancy vehicle lane addition is no longer exist in this plan.
And Tuweri has like serious details on miles, Mayor, so we can provide that to you right now.
Okay, so Mayor Hall, I guess just to try and simplify from the managed lanes from 2016, oh, sorry. Hopefully you can hear me better. From 2016 to 2035, the number of lane miles that we're adding that are specifically managed lanes, it's 202. And then it's over 100 from 2036 up until 2050.
So will that be new right away, or is that repurposed right away?
So yes, it would be looking at conversion of existing high occupancy vehicles, HOV lanes, as well as conversion of existing general purpose lanes and the usage of shoulders. And only we're in a few locations where we don't have either the shoulder width or we don't have the actual conversion ability. That's where we would add for filling in that gap.
Okay.
Okay, Mayor Hall, is that responsive to your questions?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And I see Chair Blakespear, your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to go back to the question and make it clear from my first statement. So I was curious about when we will start prioritizing these projects, or if they're already prioritized, but that just wasn't described. And then what is the concept for how we are engaging the local jurisdictions that have the land use authority here?
So let me start, and then maybe Colleen can chime in if I say something wrong. And Mayor, that's a great question. Oftentimes, the prioritization of the project is done through what we call the Regional Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP, which is a 5-year document, which takes the first year of the plan and actually now start funding it, budgeting, prioritizing it. But in this case, we're also required to show greenhouse gas emission reduction by 2035. So we are gonna say what's gonna be implemented by 2035 and leave the flexibility to the regional transportation improvement program to decide the exact priorities. And furthermore, I think between now and 2035, we would be much better off advancing the projects that reduce vehicle mile travel, reduce greenhouse gas emission, as opposed to beyond 2035. So Colleen, you want to add to that? Please go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to add a couple of things. So first of all, we showed you this map, which shows all the corridors. And if you go to Appendix A, it's these corridors, how we've arranged all the specific projects. And an important aspect here is we've been talking about these comprehensive multimodal corridor planning efforts, the CMCPs. That's where we do more detailed planning in each of these corridors. We have 5 of those CMCPs underway right now as we're working on this plan. That starts to put some of the detail together. And that's where we do even further detailed phasing. So for the regional plan, like Hassan said, the phase years are 2035 and 2050. The more detailed phasing happens at this level. And then through the CMCPs, that's what then gets fed into what Hassan is talking about, the 5-year plan, which is the RTIP. So hopefully that explains that process. The other question that you had about how we're engaging the local jurisdictions in this effort, we've been engaging through your planning directors and public works directors throughout this process to understand the land use plans that you have in place, to understand how you're putting together your housing elements, to understand where your planners are thinking about making changes to plans. And so that's the really important part that has come together when it comes to the mobility hubs. One of the things that you may or may not have noticed in Appendix A, when we talk about various programs, and there's a whole piece on programs where there is funding we're setting aside to work directly with each of the local jurisdictions on planning out the mobility hubs, on the providing the resources that you need for affordable housing to be built within the mobility hubs. And I don't know if many of you saw the governor's draft budget includes substantially additional, more funding to really help implement exactly the things we're talking about in the mobility hub. So anyway, that's how we plan to work with you. We are more than happy to work with you in any way possible to also align your climate action plans with the work we're doing here in the regional plan.
Yeah, Chair Blake.
Hopefully that helps answer your question, Chair.
And Chair Blakespeare, I appreciate your question because I know that many of the cities would say, well, wait a minute, these mobility hubs is happening in my city and I'm in charge of land use. And absolutely true. Sandag has no land use authority. But at the same time, we just went through a very rigorous regional housing need assessment process. And that regional housing need assessment said we're going to build 80% of our housing where transit, quality transit exists. And so there is opportunity areas around the region that we need to take advantage of. So I would hope that cities don't just reject the ideas in this plan and take advantage of these opportunities areas, because just so you know, in the governor's budget revise, which we worked hard with my colleagues to implement, he put $500 million for what we call sustainable community strategy. Exactly that, exactly the mobility hubs. And I think it's modeled after that. So I hope we work together collaboratively with the city, knowing that we don't have land use authorities, but we have the desire and maybe the funding to incentivize cities to do the right thing.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to make the point that I think it's really important that we, as an agency, engage the elected officials in the city, all of them, because we received as an agency of Sandag, a lot of criticism about our bike early action program, basically not being able to actualize a number of bike lanes over a long period of time. spending a lot of money on planning, and that's great and needs to happen, but just like, how do we get it across the finish line? And I know that in my city, we did have one of those bike early action plans, which now is built and is fantastic. It's the Coastal Rail Trail. But the process of working with the regional agency of Sandag, you know, the representative to Sandag was in support of the project, but then all the other elected officials who didn't know anything about it, and it had never really been comprehensively approached with an understanding of like, what is this regional agency doing in my city and why, was in my opinion was sort of a falling down. And I know that we have new leadership, and I'm sure there's some historic knowledge though of how that process went. But I think in many ways it could have gone so much better to have a presentation directly to the city council at the beginning, so that there is a framework that's laid of, this is 44 miles and it goes end to end in the county, and we have these environmental documents completed, and we have this coastal commission approval, and you know, so that you can make sure that everybody who's elected understands what's happening. And so, you know, Sandag only has up to 2 to 3 potentially people who are board or alternate, and then there are other electeds. And so, you know, I was really happy to see that you went to Del Mar to talk about the Del Mar Bluffs, and talk to all the electeds and the public there, because sometimes if you just have community meetings, the elected officials aren't roped into those things. And it's just, I cannot overemphasize the importance of having the elected officials understand what's happening in their city from a regional agency. Because if we skip that part, or we sort of think it should be happening through the planning directors, that just, I think it's too indirect. There needs to be a direct dialogue with the people who the people elected. And of course, the public will be involved in that at every stage, because those are public meetings and it's really important to take public feedback. But we want to make sure and not get bogged down in all the things that happen when that doesn't happen, like litigation or coastal commission appeals and all these various difficult things, which we can avoid with a little bit of really strong intentionality at the front. So, you know, that's maybe a lot of words there to say that I think this piece is really critical. And so I hope that as an agency, we put it top of mind.
Agreed. Well taken, and absolutely right. And just for your information, Chair, and I spoke also to our second Vice Chair, Mayor Solis, this whole bike program is going to be revisited. I'm going to be making some recommendations to the board to avoid exactly what you just said. But you're absolutely right. We're going to work with the elected. We're going to make sure there's no surprises. And we're going to make sure if we move forward with a plan as a region with the agreement with the cities, that we are true to it and move it and not delay it and budget it, etc. But we'll take it.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Blakespear, for your questions. And now we are moving to Vice Chair Sotelo Solis.
Hola, buenos dias. Good morning, everyone. So I have a couple questions, and I actually would just like to echo the sentiment of Chair Blakespear. I think it's really important that we engage all of our members of the City Council. And I know that there's definitely an open invitation for the staff to do from the region perspective at each one of our council meetings. I know that I've offered it, and I believe, as the chair mentioned, that, you know, many of us are taking advantage, kind of like Del Mar has, to get that presentation to our colleagues. So please know that that is definite. Question for staff, and I know they just went off. There she is. There's Colleen. My question is, with the purple line, can you speak a little bit more about the connectivity and from going from San Isidro all the way up to Sorrento Valley? Kind of what was the thinking behind that, and what staff really envisions for that? Because I know it was both in the 2030 and the 2050 images that I saw. So if you could tell me a little bit more about what staff envisions, but also to how, because it's one thing to say staff envisions this, but it's also the other to say that the community has said this is what we want. So kind of incorporate both of those things. Lisa, I hope that was concise enough. I don't know if you needed to reformat that question, but I want to make sure to ask that.
I think Colleen knows exactly where to go with that, with this question.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Second Vice Chair Mayor Sotelo Solis. I am going to let Jennifer Williamson, who, you know, when she went through the various points in the southern subregion, she talked about the Purple Line being her true love. So I think she is the right person to answer all those details for you.
So the question was, what was the phasing, thinking, and then the alignment? And in 2035, as I mentioned, we're going to start the line at National City and then continue it up through the urban communities of City Heights, and then connect to Mission Valley to SDSU West, connect it up to Kearney Mesa, UTC, and Sorrento Valley. And probably the theme there is that we consider the Purple Line the quintessential jobs train. If you remember all of the previous board workshops we had where we talked about what are the primary connections this region wants to make, and we're trying to connect under-resourced communities directly to our job centers. So by hitting National City, by hitting Euclid and City Heights, that provides, the catchment area for folks to travel on to get better jobs in Kearney Mesa and Sorrento Valley and UTC, which are primary tier 1 employment centers. And then, the reason we broke it, quite honestly, at National City and extended it up to Sorrento in the first phase is that we wanted to provide those connections to jobs. We knew that people from the South Bay and South County could either use Rapid to get directly from the border to that National City station, or there would be a high level of connectivity to the Blue Line trolley. There's also the feasibility of constructing this type of a line in one segment all the way from the border up to Sorrento Valley. That's almost 30 miles. And it was going to be very, very, very difficult to construct that full line by 2035. So we really had to pick the choice segment that provided the most feasibility in the first phase in 2035. So let me know if that answered your question.
And just to elaborate on this, Solis, this line is not going to divide communities. I mean, this line is proposed to go underground if need be, above ground if need be, right, Jennifer?
The grade separated, and right now we anticipate that most of it will be below ground, so high speed, high connectivity.
What about the public input? Wasn't that another question you had about how the public
Yes.
is with them?
Yeah, and I think thank you. My second question to that is with the community engagement. Because one of the questions, and I think my colleagues have had along the board or amongst the board is, we hear this is, staff has worked so hard on this. We know staff has given their perspective, and I appreciate that you've taken ownership of the Purple Line, and how we've engaged the community, that it's the community's project, because we use a lot. Staff is working on this stuff, and you've done an amazing job. But how have we incorporated the community in every single one of these projects? And if you could speak to the Purple Line specifically, I'd appreciate that.
Absolutely. So
before Jennifer give you the specific, plan is really a very, very fair step in the Purple Line or any line for that matter. We have the corridor management congestion corridor plans that's going to involve very required outreach, but then we move into environmental, into design. All of that is going to require a great deal of input from the community. So at this stage, I'll let Jennifer talk about the community involvement. At this stage, we're like in the early stage. We're kind of know where it is, what it is, whether it's underground, above ground, how many miles, what centers it connect, but we still don't have the community involvement that we get used to when we do environmental and design. Jennifer, go ahead.
Hassan kind of stole my thunder there. So there'll be quite extensive community outreach once we get into the environmental process and we start looking at alternatives and station locations. But that's not to say we haven't done a fair amount already. And Colleen mentioned our comprehensive multimodal corridor projects, the CMCPs. And the Purple Line is one of those projects that we've been out there talking about and sharing as part of our CMCP process. And in fact, one of the recent decisions that we've made as part of this outreach that we've done with the community is we had kind of two alternatives we were looking at through our urban communities. And through the CMCP analysis and working and doing outreach with our stakeholders and the public, you know, we determined that that City Heights Centerline Station might be a better alternative. So we have done, gosh, I think we've reached out to well over a few hundred people at this point as part of our CMCP process, looking at the Purple Line. But there would be, just as Hassan said, I mean, every element of an environmental process includes extensive community outreach.
And there's something else I would love to add to just in general on community outreach for this planning effort. I've been working on regional plans like this for close to 10 years. And I think there's certain things that we have heard from community members repeatedly, whether it's about the Purple Line or any other improvement. And it's all about convenience, safety, that transportation should take us where we want to go. And I think, you know, the big challenge with transit is that often there's such a distance from where a station is to where someone needs to go. And that's where this commuter rail comes in, because we're looking at how we have this direct access that goes to the centers of activity. And then where we aren't able to do that, maybe with our existing system, that's where the flexible fleets come into play to help close that gap in that first last mile. And that our services are more on demand. You know, that's where the frequency really comes into play. And when we have flexible fleets that are available on demand. So these are the kinds of things that I think we probably have 10 years worth of public input that we've heard from folks through multiple different venues, whether it's, you know, online or workshops, all of this. These are just common things that we've heard, and we have applied all of that input throughout this planning process. So, you know, that's sort of done at the high level. And then like Hassan and Jennifer are talking about, when we get into the more details and what I, the other map that I had up earlier, where we do the more corridor specific planning, that's where we get into more the detail on the specific projects, the specific elements in each of the corridors. So hopefully that gives you, I know how important community involvement is, super duper important to me as a planner. I know that's really important to you, and hopefully we're giving you the assurance that it isn't just us in a back room thinking about this stuff. We also have listened to what people want as we start to put this together.
Well, again, I appreciate that. And I think anytime we're unveiling, and I think, you know, this is our time for the board members to really give that input. It's essential for us to even go to that very minute, you know, piece that is not just small, but extremely important. They're the backbone, you know, our constituents. We want to make sure that it's going to be used. I just had two more quick questions there, Lisa. I don't know if there were any other hands raised.
Not at this time. So yes, go ahead and proceed, and then
okay.
We'll ask some other members that are here but do not have their hand raised to see if they have any other additional questions.
Fabulous. And this is really with the connectivity to various transit agencies, and in particular MTS. I'm interested in how we are working collaboratively with our other entities, because it's one thing to say this is what we want regionally, but you know, they're the ones who facilitate it day in and day out. So really looking to see what staff's engagement is, and what levels, and you know, the conversations are happening at.
So just to that question, Mayor Sotala Sali, obviously we have regular communication with our two transit agencies. I have a monthly meeting with Sharon Cooney and Matt Tucker. Our staffs meet often, a lot of times. But let me also remind the members, the elected officials in this meeting, that the way it's set up, we plan, we build, and we turn it over for the transit agencies to operate. So the mid-coast is a good example. We planned it, environmentally cleared it, designed it, built it, which is going to be completed later this year. And then we're going to turn it over to Sharon Cooney to operate it. And the same thing is true when we do the work that Jennifer talked about in the North County on the Sprinter or the Rapid Bus. So I guess we have a process that follows the statute and the requirement. We absolutely welcome, especially the elected officials who sits in the boards of the transit agencies' input. I can tell you that, for example, any discussion of any future revenue source is going to include what MTS plan to do in the Elevate 2020. So I think of us, Sandag, the two transit agencies, as really one agency trying to divide responsibilities and provide for San Diegans. So yeah, there's a great level of coordination. If you hear otherwise, given that you also sit on the MTS board or any of you, please let us know. But we think we're coordinating pretty well with our transit agency.
And maybe just to add to that, our staffs have been working hand in hand. And so just for example, all the work that MTS did on the SD Elevate, we've ensured that we've aligned all of that with what is being put forth in the regional plan. And we are actually working right now with Sharon Cooney and her team to come to the MTS board. We've been to the NCTD board as well. And we look forward to that opportunity and just continuing to get the information out and make sure that we're working lockstep.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, I also don't want it to be all rosy. I mean, we have areas of disagreement. We probably will. We're going to propose some fare structure that might not be amenable to the operators, but that's a discussion we must have as a region. I'm going to come to the board with my team very shortly and talk about, what do we do in terms of youth, senior passes, senior fares. How do we get truly the equity, the social equity things we adopted as a statement into action? We sometimes don't see eye to eye on those issues, but these are a good public policy debate to have. But in terms of the planning, I think, like Colleen said, our staff are coordinating very closely.
And I would just say to that, we look at those fares and the rates, and as a transit agency for MTS in particular, and we have to be responsive to our clients and our customers and our constituents. And I would just hate for one to be seen as losing, because it really should be a win for both entities, and that we shouldn't be just banking on the resources of the fares to offset the growth or the building of these infrastructure
Agree. And just Mayor Solis, and not to prolong this discussion, but I think the transit agency, rightly so, will tell you that we have to meet some operational performance objectives, granted. But I also believe very strongly that the fact that we have an agreement with the federal agencies and state agencies doesn't mean that it's forever and it's not flexible to change it. So that's the kind of discussion we need to engage in. So everybody wins, I think, in this case. But I just want to make sure that we see on the planning, we're totally coordinated. How we move forward, we might have a good public policy debate that result in hopefully good things for the region.
Great. And just my last point is I am very, very supportive of the Bayshore Bikeway, the connectivity, making sure that every community is connected, including National City. We still have a portion that is not built in our community. And historically, I was told that the conversation started in National City. So we will be pushing for that. And if you haven't already seen, I am wearing my 2021 Bike Everywhere and Anywhere t-shirt today because I took the pledge as well. And to that end, I just want to ask staff how they feel that our projects can help enhance our individual climate action plans. We really want to lower those carbon footprints, but is there data points that you will be providing us, support? In particular, National City is going to be working on ours later this year. So I think all of these data points will help us reach our climate action plan goals. We're talking regionally. So if you can help me with that, that'd be amazing if you could help me answer that question. But again, through the chair, thank you so much. And thank you again to staff. Thank you.
Colleen is going to answer your question regarding how we coordinate. But before we go that, let me just, first of all, I like the shirt. I have one. Unfortunately, it's far away. I can't wear it today. But just to answer the question, I think Mayor Chair Blackspear alluded to earlier. Right now, we have real issues when it comes to the bike program that we have at Sandag. There were delays, there were cost overruns, and frankly, there's a cash flow issue in the tens of millions. So I just to assure you that this is big deal for us. I am coming to the board with many recommendations. One, as you know, the bike program is outside the major corridor program. I might recommend that to be folded into the major corridor, and that would require some actions by the board. In addition, I'm also going to recommend that we increase most likely the 2% to 3%. Like Chair Blackspear alluded to, we really do need the engagement of elected officials from all over the region from the get-go, because frankly, if we're coming to spend resources to build something and there's no agreement from the city, we're wasting everyone's time and resources. And there is so much demand for this, we don't have to. So I think all of those things in the next few months, before even the adoption of the plan, you're going to hear from it. And I know you're probably not going to have unanimity on this issue, but I strongly feel that we let things fall when it shouldn't. And it's simply not, I mean, I don't want to defend Sandag, but it's not all Sandag's fault. I mean, it takes two to tangle, and we need to work together. I have the commitment of Mayor Todd Gloria, our vice chair, from the city standpoint, and I think we're working really well with the city of San Diego, given many of these projects are in the city. But you're going to hear a lot about Mayor Sotolis about the bike program, and you're going to see some good discussion and some recommendation from staff to the board.
Colleen, you also had some comments here or a response to
Yes.
Mayor Vice Chair
Yes.
Sotelis.
Yes, thank you, Lisa. The April 30th board meeting really focused on the importance of aligning state, regional, and local planning, and how when we make that all work together, we maximize the climate benefits. So Ray Major's team is pulling together the data that is necessary for all the local jurisdictions to do their climate action plans. And the nice thing is that we can provide that data that's consistent with what we're doing in the regional plan, so that we can sort of measure our success as a region collectively. I also want to just point your attention to page A54 in Appendix A, and that specifically lays out the climate action planning that Sandag proposes to do in collaboration with all of our local jurisdictions, and is actually setting aside funding to do that with you. So that's really key to our success as a region. It's not just the 19% greenhouse gas reductions that come out of this regional plan. It's leveraging that with what the state is doing and what all of you are doing in the 19 jurisdictions in this region.
Thank you, Colleen, and thank you, Hassan. Thank you, Lisa. I think really pointing it out, though, for our colleagues and our fellow board members, knowing that there are resources that will be attributed to that, because it's something that we have to do, we're all working towards. So yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out. Thank you again, Chair.
All right, we will now move on to Councilmember Shu, who has been waiting patiently. Councilmember Shu, your question, please.
Thank you, Lisa. And thank you, my fellow board members and others on this meeting. I find this meeting very helpful to learn more about the new RTP and what's being proposed. I have a series of questions. I'm going to ask them all in efforts to try to move things along faster. And I'm not asking for real long answers either. Hopefully you can address them fairly quickly. First of all, over a month ago, there was a resolution that I promoted at the Sandag board, and it was passed by the board and addressed a number of 7-8 points for the RTP, ranging from equity issues to greenhouse gas goals that are pretty hard and I know difficult to reach, dealing with health impacts, prioritizing our efforts to serve those communities that have been most impacted. And I'm kind of wondering how will those goals, those targets that we have set as a board be addressed in this RTP? So that's one of my questions. Is kind of a general question. Second is a question I have is, it's I think to really get this RTP something that people in the communities will embrace, it really helps to have what I would call demonstration type projects. So when I hear about what's happening with Highway 67 and the project that has just been successfully set to go forward with broadband internet being put into that line and helping that community, it helps me go to other places in East County and say, this is good, look at what we're doing. So I hope that we can do something like that in the next few years, or anything we can do to show the community, this is what we're talking about, this is how it works, and we're going to do it right here in National City. We're going to do it right here in La Mesa, so we could show you firsthand. So I'm hoping that is something that is part of the plan. I know the RTIP is going to work on prioritization and all that, but those are my two kind of suggestion questions as to how we're going to move forward with this plan. It's going to be, I think, a real difficult challenge for all of us elected officials, as well as Sandag, to show our communities that this RTP is not only different, but it's going to be helpful and it's going to be workable. My last question is there some kind of timeline or is there some way for us to come up with outcome measures for specific projects? To me, that's really the bottom line. And I don't know if our modelers are going to be able to work that in, and our other measurements going to be able to work that in. So let me be more specific. I know we've been looking at mode share targets in our climate action plans in the past, and that may be changing in the future, but it really helps for me to know that if we put in a bike lane, that it's actually being used, that mode share is changing. And I'm afraid that we don't have really good measurements for that. So how are we going to address that? How are we going to address if we put in a managed lane? How have we addressed congestion and more people moving and reduce greenhouse gas emissions and reduce the cost of traveling as well? All these great benefits and health benefits would be more helpful if we have some outcome measures so that we can show this stuff is working, and certainly if we could do that in demonstration projects, that would be great. So those are my kind of three general questions. Thank you.
So I'll start, and then I'm sure the people who know what they're talking about will chime in. Council member Shu, good to see you, sir. Thank you for your comment. Let me just start by saying this, and it's important to say it. Every part of this region and all the 3.3 million San Diegans are important when it comes to the 5 big moves. Whether you live in North County Coastal, North County Inland, South County, East County. So every part is important. So whether it's the 67 rural corridor and our ability to be the first in the state to actually get the CTC to allocate money last week for broadband, or is it the Delmar Bluff and the Miramar Curve? As you know, Councilmember Shu, you've been part of the discussion when people were suing each other on the Lausanne and Miramar Curve, and we said, no, there's a better way to do it. So from that standpoint, we would like to make sure that this regional plan truly is a regional plan. It does not focus in one area. But also this plan is going to have to live to the social equity goals that we adopted at the board. But to your point, how do we show that the 5 big moves truly is beneficial beyond the modeling thing, beyond the mode split, beyond the health impacts? And I just want to make sure that I lower the expectation. I mean, we started in this journey about 2 years ago. We're building the tools and the data, and our chief economist and chief data analytics is here today to elaborate. The internet of everything, the big data, the open data, that's something we must do. We must demonstrate that our approach forward is beneficial from all kinds, whether it's health or otherwise. But I also want you to know that to lower expectation that we're not there yet. We have a lot of tools to build and a lot of data to get to be able to answer the excellent questions you're raising. And I just, not to tell you, don't ask this question, tell you that great questions, but we're not there yet for us, for example, in the release of the draft to have this information. But I'll have Ray and Colleen add to what I just said.
First of all, with respect to your resolution, I think everything in this plan is going in that direction. I agree with Hassan that, depending on where the board wants us to go with that resolution, we can come back to you with more specifics. I'm going to give her a chance to get ready. I'm going to ask Antoinette to talk about some of our demonstration projects. And so I'm really glad that you brought up State Route 67 and how we were able to be really nimble and move quickly on, putting together a program to start to address some issues. And so we can start piloting some of these concepts that then could be applied at a greater scale on rural corridors. We have in the budget that went before you last week some pilots for flexible fleets. These are other opportunities where we can do demonstrations, see how they work. And as we learn from those, they can be refined. And then with community support, they could be applied more broadly. And maybe Antoinette, if you're available, you could talk about some of the things that we're going to be doing on the border with the San Ysidro port of entry and some of the other pilots that we want to try to test out. And then maybe at the end, Hassan, you can talk a little bit more about some of the things that we want to try to bring forward to the board to address equity sooner than later. So sort of advancing some of those ideas. So Antoinette.
Yep, happy to. So Councilmember Shu, I think you're thinking exactly like us. And, we have an entire team now that's really dedicated to demonstrating these concepts in our Mobility and Innovation Department. So you mentioned the SR 67, and that's really a statewide demonstration of a dig once policy and the opportunity to use roadway improvement projects to expand the fiber communications infrastructure that we need both for the future of transportation, but also to address digital equity issues that became a real focus. And we've noticed more than ever during the pandemic when everyone's needed to be able to get online, and so many households just didn't have that ability. As Colleen mentioned, the border, we received a $9.3 million grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation late last year to deploy some NextOS solutions in the border region. So a regional border management system, smart intersections that'll make it safer in the border region, and that will allow traffic to flow more smoothly in the border region. Mobility hub amenities like trip planning kiosks, expanding the integrated corridor management system so we can start to manage how lanes are used in the border region. So that's a that's a very large scale demonstration project. Again, that won't only have impacts for our region, implications for our region, but statewide and even international, because it's a border. We've done a couple of flexible fleet demonstration projects and have a few more that are planned. We're working on a strategic plan that will identify locations around the region where we can deploy different types of flexible fleet solutions to meet the unique needs of different types of communities. And equity is at the core of how we evaluate all of our demonstration projects. So, the border region is one example where we see an opportunity to really address equity and improve mobility for communities that need it most. The same thing with flexible fleets. We're really looking at, bringing flexible fleets to communities that have limited mobility options right now. And the same with technology. We want technology to improve everyone's lives and to make mobility better for everyone. So thank you for your comments, and just know that we're thinking the same way, and we're excited to come back and talk more about our demonstrations at future board meetings.
And Councilmember Shu, just
people to join. And one of the things I just wanted to make everyone aware of here, just before you talk about the equity piece, Hassan, there's a whole team of Sandag staff. Like, I'm standing here in this blue dress talking with you, but there is so much more behind me than me. I just want you all to know that. So, Hassan, if you can talk about the equity piece, and then I'm going to ask Ray to talk about the kind of ongoing performance monitoring.
Yeah, Councilmember Shu, and I think I need to brag here about the team. Just to give you an idea, this broadband started as a crazy idea by Antoinette just a few months ago, and it moved now into a statewide, the first in its kind of the state and the country where a transportation agency will do into this. And this is going to set precedent for thousands of miles of broadband for social equity to reach rural communities, etc. So I think, I assure you, the chair, the vice chair, all of the elected officials attending today, that you have an amazing people that Colleen said is sitting in that vigil lab, getting numbers. But let me try to address Colleen's question. We don't have to wait until 2035 to address the social equity that Councilmember Moreno, Vivian Moreno, I think she's in attendance today, I'm not sure.
Yes.
Worked really hard with the group, with the social equity group to come. We're gonna come to the board actually in the next, Robin could correct me, but I think we're coming to the board in July. And we're trying to find the money, and I think we're very close to propose some very significant but a fair step toward achieving some social equity goals when it comes to transit. This means that the region has to commit millions of dollars to do it. But I believe, I want to make sure I underline what I said many, many times. An equity statement is just a statement unless you follow it by action. So to your point, I mean, we have to start aligning, we have to start being true to what we're saying. And back to the data, and I'm going to let Ray Major answer. I hope that this board will continue to commit, and you have already by your action on the budget and giving us additional resources, but continue to commit to the Internet of Everything, the big data, the open data, the next operating system. Because like Antoinette said, technology and future mobility and transportation as a service is going to have to demonstrate how beneficial this to the region. So with that, I'll turn it to Ray.
Thank you, Hassan. Councilmember Shu, thank you very much for asking a data question. And thank you very much for your support on the budget also, which is going to allow us to bring on board data scientists to do exactly this type of work, to do these type of data collection and analytic efforts. We don't currently have good ways to monitor whether or not some of these projects are truly effective. We're trying to bring in different data sources to see how, for instance, people move around the region. But when you're talking about specific projects, like whether or not a bike project is working, we need to find a way to collect that data. And there's lots of different ways to do that. And it requires a team of people to really do that here at Sandag. And with the new funding that we have, I'm really optimistic that we're going to be able to start to figure out much more of the cost benefit analysis from actually ground truthing what is happening here in the region with the projects that we're building. So that's forthcoming, and it's something that we're really looking forward to doing. So thank you for your support on that.
Councilmember Shu, does that is that all responsive to your various questions? And actually, you had a three-part question. So,
yes, it does. And you know, I could ask many questions that'll take another few hours or days. So I think that's very sufficient. I just want to commend staff as well. You know, with it's a giant plan with many components, and within a relatively short time, even if it took an hour, they actually put it into something that is that I could understand better, and I think the public can understand better. So that's really great. I love Ray Major's. Well, I usually love everything he says, but in any case, his demonstration of the layers was extremely effective. I think he should keep those graphics. That's very helpful. And then as we got down to each part of the county and each some of the more specific projects, I think is really helpful. I think the community and myself and others are very anxious when we hear about things like the purple line that we've been talking about for a long time. They naturally automatically talk about, well, what about this intersection? How about my intersection? How can I get from here to there? Will this work for my community? Those are things that are going to be human nature, that people are going to ask these questions and be very specific and are seeking for immediate answer. So I think it's going to be difficult. I hope staff is not, well, staff is probably very accustomed to this, but they're going to continue getting those kinds of demands. I think it's up to us that are involved with the planning process more, that are elected officials on the board, to ease that process by saying, we'll work on it. We're going to come up with the best solution, but it's going to take some time, and there's going to be some conflicts. But you know, we're here to work out those conflicts, and we're going to go forward, and we will have a better line, and we're going to try to do it as fast as we can. And maybe we could do several of these things all at the same time. Sandag worked very hard to get the Mid-Coast extension done of the Blue Line. That was one project. I'm hoping we can do 3 or 4 of those projects like that all at the same time. It's going to be a huge amount of work, but that's what we have to do because we are behind. We're catching up. Catching up means we're going to have to do 3 projects like the Mid-Coast extension all at the same time so we can get there by 2035. But anyway, thank you all for doing a great job with this presentation.
And just for our leadership and for our council members on the meeting today, I think if you look at the governor's Mary Vice on the budget, it absolutely follows the kind of ideas we've been talking about in the region. I don't know whether they saw Mr. Shu's resolution, but it is $15 billion more for transportation, $500 million for regional agencies to do sustainable community strategies right, and a lot of mechanisms to dig once policy, you know, to reach the rural areas and achieve social equity. I think everything we've been talking about in the last couple of years is something the state is taking very seriously, and we have a partner in Sacramento as opposed to otherwise. And so I am hoping that we capitalize on this and we be probably the only region in the state that have a head start and compete well, in addition to the national discussion of a national stimulus that's going to do all of these things. So I think we're on the right track. It's not going to be easy, but I'm looking forward to the debate that council member was talking about with the board members.
Thank you, Hassan. At this time, we are past our 2-hour mark. I didn't know if we want to take advantage of a little break for everyone. We do not have any hands raised at this time, but I do see that we have Council Member Moreno present with us. So what we can do is maybe see if she has any questions, or we can go to a break, a quick 5-minute break. Chair Blakespear, what are your thoughts?
Yes, I think if she wants to speak, we should obviously let her speak or ask a question, but if she doesn't have her hand up, we don't want to pressure her.
Exactly.
And so I think, yeah, a 5-minute break. And then when we come back, we'll go to public comment, and which is on the agenda. And then we'll go to non-public comment, or sorry, non-agenda public comment. And is that what your understanding, Lisa, of the next stage here?
Yes, it is. And I see Chair Marino now with us. Chair Marino, I'm sorry, not Chair Marino, but Vice Chair. Actually, not Vice Chair, it was just Council Member Marino. Here we go. I got it right now. Council Member Marino.
Is on, right? No, thank you for the presentation. I was able to see the first hour of the presentation. I will share one, I'm going to call it a concern. Is that the South, when you guys presented the South area, which obviously that's where my district lies, it was like a South Central, and it included Del Mar. And I just kind of scratched my head, and I'm wondering if there will be more of a, and I get it, like the purple line is going to go up to Central, so I understand that, but I want to make a pitch that the border is just such a mammoth entity, and it impacts the transportation of San Diego. I think it probably has one of the largest impacts. That I'm wondering if you guys in the future will zero in on these areas a little bit more. I don't recall the North, when you guys showed the North area map. It was just the North area map. It wasn't, a Central, and it wasn't any other project. So, and as you guys know, most of the traffic, I'm not saying all of it, but I'm saying most of the traffic does flow from the South to the North to the Central. So, I just would, for the sake of my community and for the sake of the people who have elected me, I would like to see more of a focus and just zero in on the South area.
Point will take in Councilmember Moreno, and I just, today we chose not to put all the detail, but you and I had this discussion before. I think I couldn't agree more that what happened at the border impact every part of the region. But secondly, there's like, you didn't see today that we're connecting San Diego International to CBX to San Isidro. We're building the second largest mobility hub at San Isidro, all the rapid bus lines. But you're right, the way we presented it looked like we're just glanced over a very important area. But you will see those details in the future, and I'll let Colleen address some of the general questions on the area.
I think you're absolutely right, Councilmember Moreno. It was hard for us to figure out kind of how to break this up, and because there are such long north-south trips, just like you're saying, to the central area, and all those connections are being made. So that was one way to try to do this. Without a doubt, that whole border area is really important, and we'd be happy to work on breaking that down in a way that makes sense to you to share with your communities.
Thank you, and I'm very happy to hear about the equity funding that was mentioned. I think the sooner we get not only money, but a plan, right, to address some of these infrastructure matters or transportation infrastructure matters, I think the better suited we're going to be to tapping into some really in what I would think is some good funding coming for equity or communities of concern, because this is, I think the whole nation is going in that direction. I think a lot of government agencies have seen that they've left a lot of communities behind, and it's going to take a lot of effort for us to catch up. And there's going to be a lot of attention paid to communities that historically have not been paid attention to. So the sooner that's a word, right? The sooner we can get to a list of those projects and a commitment, I think that, to have the community digest and to have the community really see, wow, Sandag, really is serious about this. I think the better it will be. for all of us. And that concludes my comments. Thank you for calling. I was a little shy, but I appreciate you guys pushing me to talk. So thank you, Chair, for the time that I was able to speak.
Thank you, Councilmember Moreno. And so now I will turn it back to the chair. She will get us to our break, our 5-minute break. It's about 10:39, so let's say it's going to be 10:45 is when we'll see everyone back. Chair, is that good for you?
That sounds great. Let's do that. Okay, well, we're 6 minutes in, so we should probably get back to it. If you are someone wanting to make a public comment on this agenda item, please put your hand up and the clerk can call on you. Lisa, did you have anything else you wanted to say? Thank you so much for your help today.
Actually, I just wanted to thank everyone. I really appreciated the opportunity to be your facilitator. I hope that you've appreciated this time and this discussion and that you found it meaningful as well as responsive to your questions and your needs. If there was any feedback that you'd like to give me as your facilitator, I'm happy to receive it, whether it's an email or a phone call or any comments in the chat at this time. Just thank you very much for the opportunity.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate your help. I feel only positive feedback, so I'll offer that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay, so do we have, I'd like to ask the clerk if we have any public comment.
Thank you, Chair. We do have 2 members of the public who'd like to speak. First will be Craig Jones, followed by Carolina. Craig, we've given you access to your microphone. You can go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate it. 3 quick things. In terms of, I'm a member of the Social Equity Working Group. In terms of achieving equity and promoting transportation equity, I think it'll be important to chronologically prioritize investments, improvements, capital investments, and system improvements in those geographic areas, those communities of concern that have been historically disadvantaged. Those are the ones that you can identify on a map through, for example, Cal EnviroScreen. So just that comment. I have a concern about the use of managed lanes for public transportation rapid services. Some of the graphics we've seen before show separation, strict separation of travelways for example, next gen rapid, strict separation of those from automobile traffic on managed lanes. And I want to know that that's still going to be the case. Otherwise, you're going to have public transportation bollocksed up in automobile traffic during times of congestion. So is there any comment on that? Thank you.
Yeah, let me, I'm sorry, go ahead, Chair. How do you want us to do? Just take the comment or?
Yeah,
comment?
just go. It's perfectly fine. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chair. And thank you, sir, for your comment. Let me just say that the whole concept of managed lane or dynamic pricing is you have to guarantee a certain speed for this to work. Otherwise, why would anybody take it or pay, let alone pay for it to take it? So we're guaranteeing a much better speed for the buses than in the traffic. That's why we don't think the HOV concept works. So by dynamically pricing the lane, you kind of control of how the buses can, or how fast the buses can travel. So that is an answer to the question. I will say that oftentimes when, say in the LA area or Orange County, when you have toll roads and you have it dynamically priced, every time the traffic gets bad, you raise the price, and therefore the traffic always maintain 45 for better speed. And that is the least speed we can guarantee for the next rapid buses.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Carolina. You can go ahead when you're ready, Carolina.
Thank you. Good morning, board members and staff. My name is Carolina with the Environmental Health Coalition and San Diego Transportation Equity Working Group. We really appreciate the presentation and the detail. There are some things that are coming up today, some questions and or clarifying points. So it seems to be that there's not going to be any freeway expansion, correct? It's just that there's going to be a repurposing of the lanes to convert some of them to managed lanes. So just wanted to clarify that. I also have questions about one of the rapid routes that were pointed as a precursor to the Blue Line Express. As you know, for our South Bay communities, specifically communities like Barrio Logan, National City, and the border crossing, the Blue Line currently is not meeting the needs of the communities. And we realize that the Purple Line is going to be in place, and it's a huge investment, yet there doesn't seem to be any investment in the Blue Line as it is. It's the backbone of San Diego's transit system, yet there's no vision for the line. So just wanted to kind of raise that and ask if we could have a point that specifically talks about the Blue Line and how we take it into the future. It seems to be that we're going to leave the Blue Line behind. So that was another point. Another clarifying point, which I really appreciate, is exciting to hear that we're talking about a 10-minute service with transit. That's super exciting. So that way we don't have to conduct a deep analysis to be able to ride transit and actually just rely on transit as something that we use instantaneously. So can you clarify? So it was stated that it would be done by 2025 and that it would be all day. So that means that we're putting in place a 24-hour transit system. And if that would be done by 2025. And then there's a lot of reference to Appendix A. We've been looking for it online and we're not able to find it. Has that been made that available to the public or is it only to the board members? And And those are my questions. Thank you.
I'm going to start with the first one you asked, and then Jennifer, I'm sure will answer your specific question regarding whether we are taking a new right of way for any of the freeways, and the answer is absolutely not. We're using shoulders and existing lanes to do the footprint of the managed lane. So with that, Jennifer, you want to answer the other questions?
Yes, and I appreciate you being asked about the blue line and the rapid route. And if you see here on our diagram, we actually are developing a rapid route directly from the border of, actually the border's a little further down here, all the way up to emulate the Blue Line Express. And that is a 2035 route. And what that'll do is provide a point-to-point service to relieve some of the congestion on the Blue Line today. That being said, in the presentation, I might have said it too fast or glossed over it, but the Blue Line we know is the backbone of the transit system. And so the Blue Line currently has 7.5-minute headways at certain points during the day, and we'll be increasing those as well in the Blue Line. But additionally, one of the issues we have right now with the Blue Line is congestion at major grade crossings. So part of what we're looking at with the Blue Line to speed it up is to provide some separation so we get better through travel on that corridor. And then the goal is to expand the time frame of operation, so the span of service on the Blue Line as well. And then the 10-minute headways, those are in there. There will be an analysis to figure out where we can operate 24-hour service. Not every line on our transit system right now is designed to support 24-hour service. So there will be 10-minute headways throughout the base day. And then we'll need to evaluate where we can extend those span of frequency. We do know that in some of our communities of color, we'll really be focusing on those broader spans of service up to 24 hours. So that would be some of those routes I talked about early in our plan, like the Rapid 10, the Rapid 12, and some of the connecting services to our activity centers. So
just Jennifer, just to add, for the 24-hour service. So in some cases, we have a limitation, for example, on the trolley operation because of the freight. So we couldn't operate, but we can overcome that by deploying the flexible fleet for a less than, so we don't have to run a trolley or a 40-foot bus to accommodate. We could use flexible fleet and demand services. But one thing you're going to hear very shortly, a discussion at our board, is actually we're going to put some funding to make sure this 24-hour service is taken seriously for especially communities that need it most.
And then if I could just mention, we are posting Appendix A to San Diego Forward website right now. So I think that if you just wait a couple minutes, you'll be able to go online and get that appendix to review.
Okay, thank you for those great questions, and thank you for the answers. Do we have Clerk any more, or did you want to say anything else? Okay, so Clerk, do we have any other public comments?
No, Chair, that is the end of the public comments. I do see Councilmember Shu has raised his hand, but that's it.
Okay, great. So that's the end of public comments on agenda items. So we'll go to Councilmember Shu, and then if there are non-agenda public comments, please put your hand up now. So Councilmember Shu.
Thank you, Chair Blakespeare. I want to make some comments to maybe help Sandag staff with its presentations and maybe express the frustrations that many people in the community may have with regards to transit development. First of all, let me say that there's a difference between operational costs and major capital improvements. And though operational costs such as increasing the frequency is helpful, it really doesn't build the kind of system we really need. It's really a short-term solution. So if we can reduce travel time by having a better system, that's really the real improvement. So that, as Hassan gave us a vision some time ago, that the commute time between San Ysidro and downtown San Diego should be much shorter, should be half of what it is now. and that's with the capital improvements we need. I suggested on the chat that perhaps SENDAG should use the Cal Environmental Screening Map from the state to really show which communities in our region is suffering the most from the pollution of our transportation, primarily our transportation system. Those are the communities that need to be helped. And so when we talk about equity, that's where the concentration should be with regards to making a change. And when I speak of outcome measures, I want to see the asthma rates in those communities go down. And I hope we can see them go down in the next 5 years, not wait to 2050 or 2045. So those are the outcome measures that I hope we can go to at some point. And I've said that for many years as an advocate, and maybe we can work towards that now. On the other it's I think frustrating for me when I look at our transportation system and how we're improving it, and to see the inequity. Right now, our operating transit trolley system, light rail system, has one line primarily that is really built for transit, and that's the green line. And we know which community that serves. Later this year, we'll have another extension of another line that is grade separated, that is brand new, made for transportation, and that'll be the Mid-Coast Trolley, and we know what community that is serving. The line that is most used by people, the most congested, has the best cost recovery, is still an old freight line system that has all kinds of issues with grade separation, without any grade separation. So when we increase frequency to 10 minutes, or even a headway of 7.5 minutes, those communities are interrupted with crossing lines, with bells and whistles of trolleys going through those communities more often, because those lines are not underground, they're not grade separated, unlike the other brand new lines we just built. So these inequities are huge. And I think that's where I think much of our community is crying out to say, that's why equity is an issue, and why these other projects, whether we're talking about the purple line, improvements to the blue line, are so important. Because we have a huge problem. Our investment in a transit line really has been to communities that have much greater wealth. And to me, that's what we can change as we go forward. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much for those comments, Councilmember Xu. Do we have any non-agenda public comment?
No, Chair, I don't have any hands for non-agenda public comments.
Okay. Well, then we are nearing the very end of this meeting. Just so that everybody's aware, there will be the same conversation and information presented at 8:30 a.m. on Friday. So there'll be more time for discussion if anybody wants to log in again or has questions that come up. And so I think with that, we are adjourned. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.